Welcome to Why Knowledge Matters. In this episode, world-renowned human motivation researcher and professor of psychology Richard Koestner joins me to discuss why you should set a New Year's resolution, how to set successfully a New Year's resolution, and why you should reset your New Year's resolution potentially on July 1st. Enjoy. Welcome back, Richard. I'm so excited to talk to you today about New Year's resolutions, and who better than yourself talking about this very and timely topic. Welcome, Richard.
You're welcome, and I'm happy to be here. And I would say of all the things that people talk to me about, this is the one that I know best because I've actually done research on it and because it happens every year. Now, the funny thing is, last year and this year, I have a sense that people are less likely to set New Year's resolutions. And it's because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And because just like last year at Christmas and New Year's, we're in lockdown again here in Quebec. I don't know if in Ottawa. And I think usually the resolutions are connected to the end of the year, getting together with family, thinking about how the year has gone, and having some positive anticipation about the new year. Unfortunately, I think most of us Canadians and probably all Europeans, we have a sense of dread about this coming winter. So perhaps there'll be less resolutions than usual. But I'll still tell you what I do know about resolutions, and maybe I'll just come back to this at the end.
So first, Richard, really, why should we actually set a New Year's resolution at all?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And research suggests that about 50% of Americans set resolutions, not necessarily every year. But a lot of people, they feel ridiculous setting a resolution because the common wisdom about resolutions is that they don't work. So why do you bother doing it? Now, I'm going to tell you that that's often the case. I still think it's useful to set resolutions because if you take a close look, the New Year's resolutions people make, they're actually self-change attempts. And the most common resolutions are about our health. The number one resolution year after year after year is to quit smoking. The number two is to lose weight or to eat better. And the number three is to exercise more. If you asked a public health official, what are the three things that you want the Canadian public to do to improve their health outcomes and to live longer, more fulfilling lives, the three things you would recommend are quit smoking, manage your eating, and exercise. Exercise is a panacea. It's like taking medicine. So I'm wholly behind the idea of setting these kinds of resolutions. And I think it can make our lives better. Now, well, I'll stop there and I'll let you ask what you ask next.
Now, the question, obviously, and since you are a scientist and a world-leading human motivation researcher and professor of psychology, how do you successfully set a New Year's resolution?
Okay, so first thing I'll tell you is most likely we're going to fail. People who succeed at a New Year's resolution have usually attempted that resolution an average of 5 or 6 times. So someone who quits smoking with a New Year's resolution has usually tried 5 or 6 times before. And there's a lot of evidence that there's kind of a cycle of change where sometimes we're not even thinking about it, then we start to think about it, then we make a plan, then we take action, then we have some success. Then after a month, we get off of our diet and we're back to where we were. And, we have to start over. But sometimes we start along at a further stage and we learn something from the previous failed attempt. So number one, how to succeed, you first have to realize that to some extent, failure is normative and it's still worth trying, but don't be too hard on yourself. For example, Yannick, if you've tried 4 times before to eat more vegetables, and if you failed every time, this might be the year where you're going to do it because it's your 5th or 6th attempt. Okay, so failure is normative. And then the next question, why do we fail? There's very good evidence now that setting a new goal, which is what a resolution is, requires some self-control capacity. You need some spare willpower, a cushion of willpower to take on this new goal on top of all of the other goals you have in your everyday life. So Yannick, you came back to Ottawa or whatever, there's probably a lot of things you have to do. You have to fill up the refrigerator. You have to check in with all the people there's many things you have to do. Now, it turns out that our self-control capacities, it looks like there's a limit. Your limit might be higher than mine, and mine might be higher than another person's, but each of us has an individual limit to how much self-control we can exercise, how much we could push ourselves to do things that we feel need to be done. And because there's a limit, when you set a new goal, you better have a little bit of self-control left in your reservoir. And the evidence suggests that all of us have such busy, complicated, chaotic, motivational lives that we are maxed out. We have nothing to spare. And for New Year's resolutions, people usually set 3 of them. So like my students, they always say, I'm going to get all A's this semester. And then they say, I'm going to exercise 5 times a week. And then they say, I'm going to meet a girl. And those are 3 big new goals. And the problem is we don't have the self-control resources. So my first 2 points, failure is normative. The reason we're failing is because we don't have the self-control. Then the question is, how do you get around this self-control barrier? And there's 3 empirically supported methods. One of them, the first one, and this is my area of research, involves being thoughtful, being sensible about the kinds of goals or resolutions you select. I distinguish between resolutions that you really want to do and that you really care about and that you're interested in versus resolutions that you feel like you have to do, where others are telling you to do it, or where you feel because of guilt feelings it's something you should do. I call these like autonomy and control. And the surprising thing is a lot of our resolutions are coming from a place of control. It's almost like we're not setting them because we want to set them. We're setting them because we feel like we have to or we should. So there's a sense of pressure and coercion. And what that means is we're going to resist that and we're going to be conflicted. And when you're pursuing a goal, you want to feel wholehearted about it. You want to really endorse it. And you want to say, boy, either I'm really interested in this or it's personally valuable and important. It's even better if you could have both those things. So I always recommend don't just set a New Year's resolution on the spur of the moment because it's 11:59 on New Year's Eve. Start thinking about it now. They've shown that people who spend December thinking about what resolution they should set do a better job of selecting a more autonomous resolution and then succeeding. Okay, let's say you followed all of that. You set a really intrinsic or meaningful resolution. So this year I'm going to do a winter pentathlon in Quebec City. I did that 2 years ago and then the pandemic hit, but I've decided I'm going to do it again. Now, by setting that goal, that means I'm going to ski. That means I'm going to bicycle in the winter. It means I'm going to run. It's a lot of fitness activity. Koestner is going to get back out there and he's going to get in shape. Okay, so that's the goal and I'm excited about it. But now here's some bad news. Coming up with a really cool goal, even if it's something that's autonomous or intrinsic, it doesn't get you so far. It's really just an intention. And as we all know, intentions don't guarantee behavior or success. So there's a German researcher named Peter Gollwitzer who has shown that when you have a New Year's resolution and you have a goal, you have to combine it with a mental plan. You have to have a plan that specifies when, where, and how you're going to engage in the behaviors that will help you reach your goal. So if you say, Yannick, that you've been inspired by me and you want to do a 10K, no, you're going to do the Canadian ski marathon, 50 kilometers through the Laurentian Mountains. It's a nice goal, but you have to make a plan then of, okay, when are you going to do your ski training? Are you going to go 3 mornings a week? Are you going to go on the weekends? Are you going to get a Nordic track ski machine? And you have to have a specific plan of where, when, and how. You also have to have a plan for what you do if your first plan doesn't work, if there's an obstacle or distraction. Okay, so now you have your goal, you have your mental plan. The mental plan isn't complicated. It just takes 10 minutes of thinking and writing it down. You have a goal, you have your plan. I'm going to give you one other really special thing that most of us do naturally, but we should even do it more. And that is, you want to share your plan with others. The easiest way to do that is to find someone else who will try the same plan with you. And this way, the two of you will be doing it together. You'll be reminded of it. You'll enjoy it more. It will seem more meaningful. And there's research now that suggests that every personal goal is actually interpersonal. Even if your friends and family don't do it with you, they talk to you about it. They ask you about it. They encourage you. We've looked at how other people try to encourage us. And what's most common is people are like cheerleaders. They say, you can do it, Yannick. You're going to be a great cross-country skier. Get out there. I'm proud of you. Or they might see what you're doing and say, Yannick, you're doing it all wrong. You got to do it with wax skis. You have to use wax skis. Don't use the waxless. You won't get anywhere with those. And that's how people usually help us, quote, help us. And it turns out that doesn't help at all. And sometimes it backfires. What's helpful is if people are more invisible in how they help. What's helpful is when people show interest, they ask you about it, they empathize, but they don't get over-involved. They don't get invested. They just listen and support you. So I've said 3 things. You select a goal that's interesting and personally meaningful so that it's autonomous. You have a mental plan that specifies when, where, and how to do it. And then you have other people helping you. So find these people who are like invisible supporters. All 3 of those things protect our self-control resources so that when you are doing something that's interesting and meaningful, you don't have to push yourself. There's not a motivational wall. Instead, it's coming from you, and it feels effortless as you pursue it. If you have a good plan And if you do it for like a month, it becomes automatic and you don't even have to think about it and you don't have to schedule it and you don't have to push yourself. And if you have other people involved with you, that's like you're outsourcing some of the self-control responsibility. They're giving you added self-control bonus points. So those three things help us get beyond the inevitable self-control barriers. And I think we should all recognize that a New Year's resolution is important. It would be great if we could do it, but we have to think about the goal we're going to select, how we're going to pursue it, and who we're going to pursue it with. And if you answer those questions, why am I choosing this goal? How am I going to reach this goal? And who is supporting me along the way? And if you have good answers to that, your chances are greatly increased. You still might fail, but that comes with setting goals. And then next year, you'll have a better chance.
Yeah, this really sounds so fascinating, and it really makes sense. It's like being accountable, like working in a company, right? They set goals and they achieve it because they have the mechanism, the support system around them in order to get there. That's, I'm sure that if our viewers follow your advice, that they will follow through. Now, I have another and one more question in terms of the context people live in. For example, we know when you live in Montreal, usually winter is very tough and it might be much harder to actually push through in order
This is
to
so
get
good.
to your goals.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I mean, I've always set New Year's resolutions since I was 16. I set 2 or 3, and it took me like 10, 15 years to realize I keep setting the same ones over and over. There are some resolutions that I set like 15 times. And one of the things that occurred to me, I've been living in Montreal 32 years, is that you could not choose a worse time to set a new goal than January 1st in Montreal. It is cold, it is icy, it is wintry. I see you're wearing a scarf in your house. I'm wearing my sweater. I take public transit. I get all dressed up to get to the public transit. Then I get in the metro and it's like 100 degrees in there. And then I start sweating. And then the streets are icy. And every day is a struggle in January. We don't have a lot of light, which can cheer us up. It's freezing cold. We have a long, dreary winter ahead of us. And I think there is no worse time. And what I've begun to do, and I'm really happy I came up with this, I think you should set a New Year's resolution. But I would like to ask you to also set a Canada Day resolution. Canada Day is exactly halfway through the school year or the calendar year. So it's July 1st.
Yeah.
July 1st. Now I've been doing this. So I was going to watch with my wife, we were going to watch Downton Abbey, the whole thing. It failed miserably. It's a really complicated story, pretty boring to start too. So I failed at it. But then when Canada Day came, we tried it again and we did it. And I've done that before, like 3 times now, where the resolution I had on January 1st, I failed, but then I tried again July 1st. And if you and I were meeting right now and it was July 1st, I would be out on my patio. I'd be wearing shorts. I'd have a Hawaiian shirt on. You would probably be swinging your golf club. July is a really sweet time of the year for most of us. I mean, sure, there's some bugs and whatnot, but life is easier. You don't have as many things to think about as you do in January in Montreal. So that's my last suggestion for you. Do think of the New Year's resolutions as a practice, a 6-month practice. But then July 1st, try it again. And always the key is if you could do it for 1 month, there's a good chance you'll be able to stick with it. So, and that month of July is a great month to do exercise or eat more vegetables, or I'm not sure if it's a great time to quit smoking. That's a struggle. With quitting smoking, you should probably get a nicotine patch. You should talk to a doctor about the best way to do it. And quitting smoking is so important because it really costs you a lot of years of your life. But thanks for asking about, now, Yannick, have you yourself thought about your resolution for this year?
You know what? This is really interesting. I mean, I wish for my parents that they will quit smoking. I mean,
Oh boy.
this is
Yeah.
the big thing, this is really the only thing that really bothers me, because they don't really drink alcohol and they live very healthy lives, really very healthy lives.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that they smoke. So that is the only concern that I have. But personally, I'm just not very into it, when it comes to New Year and
Yeah.
resolutions. To me personally, if I have something that I really, and usually it's, as you said, I have a lot of intrinsic goals, then
Yeah.
I don't really struggle actually to pursue that. I think there's
Yeah.
always things that I can optimize and I want to optimize. And I think
Yes.
that's something that I will now try this year. Actually, I will, the very first time since, I don't know, 20, 25 years, I don't know, that I really set a New Year's resolution
Yeah.
based on what you just said. Yeah.
Well, in fact, I think it's New Year's resolutions are really big in the United States. They're pretty big in Canada. I've heard that there's other countries that do it. I've heard they do it in China around the Chinese New Year. But in a lot of cultures, you'll have a resolution on your birthday or you'll set new goals on your birthday. But yeah, it is a little bit of a funny tradition. But I've learned a lot from it. And I have done a lot of interviews about it. And I think for most of us, anything that helps us trying to improve our health behaviors is probably a good thing. And most people who improve their health behaviors, they do it on their own. Most people don't do it with the help of a psychologist or a doctor. It's really surprising. It's a self-change attempt. A New Year's resolution is something that triggers that. Sorry about your parents. I always worry about older people who smoke too. The good news is that leading a healthy lifestyle, exercise, that reduces some of the damage of the smoking. So it can counteract it a bit. But yes, it really would be good if people could find a way to quit smoking. Sorry, anyone watching who struggles with that, but
Yeah.
It is the case that people have done it, and it takes, with smoking in particular, it takes many attempts.
Mm.
Yeah.
And do you personally, I'm very curious, have, one favorite New Year's resolution that you have heard over and over again? Because I also read your research that you did, in 2002, actually, a very comprehensive study you did with students. And this is really all backed up by science, what you just actually said, previously.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you my personal favorite, and I think there's something about this that would work for other people. So in the year 2000, the Olympics were in Greece, and for the first time they had a triathlon as part of the Olympics. And a Canadian named Simon Whitfield won the first ever modern Olympic triathlon. And that's where you swim, you bike. No, you swim, you run, and you bike. And it's a pretty long distance. It took him 2 hours. It would take us 4 hours. And when I was watching, the announcer said, all of you who are watching this will be surprised. It's not that hard to do an Olympic level triathlon. It takes a lot of training. You can't do it fast, but most of us can do it. And I hit upon the idea of, okay, I'm going to try to do that. And I told a couple of my buddies who are professors, and they were really excited about it. And then we started training. And what it involved was I had to learn how to swim better. I had to learn how to breathe while swimming. Then I had to learn how to bicycle. I had to learn how to run. And we would meet 3-4 times a week. We even planned the to transition, changing from the swimming, or getting out of the wetsuits onto the bicycle. And it's still the most positive memory I have of being in Montreal and being a professor. I did it. I was only able to do a full one in my second year because my swimming wasn't so good. But I remember when I finished the swimming, I felt triumphant. It's like it's a mile swim. We did it in the rowing basin on St. Helens Island. And what this particular goal did for me is when I was training, I no longer felt like a 40-year-old guy who's just like trying to get rid of his blubber belly. I felt like a triathlete in training. And everyone was coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I hear you're doing a triathlon." And some people would say, "Did you swim to work today or did you bike to work?" And it was a lot of fun. I recommend it, Yannick. If you haven't done a triathlon, there's a lot of cachet associated with it. But more than the cachet is the identity as someone who's doing something athletic that's hard and that requires a lot of training. And it gave so much meaning to all of the other sports activities I might try to do. Even your eating, you have to eat differently when you're going to do long distance. So I found there was something about that really resonated with my identity. And when I was a young kid, I liked sports. I was never a triathlete. I was a basketball player. But tapping into that childhood identity as an athlete and then feeling like that again in my 40s, that was pretty special. So if there's something that has some panache that captivates you, it could be my wife. The one she has is hiking the Appalachian Trail. She loves hiking. Something like that is neat.
Yeah, you bring up so good ideas actually, and it's really, as you said, it makes you really also more focused. It gives you something that really drives you. Ah, beautiful, your cat. That's
Yeah.
it's always nice.
My goal last year was to feed my cat less treats, and I didn't succeed at it. And my goal this year might be to train her not to come up on my desk when I'm in Zoom sessions.
Beautiful. Yeah, Richard, thank you so much for this wonderful session and for your cutting edge tips. And most of all, I wish you a happy new year.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. And everyone, please hang in there. It's a dark new year this year, but we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of this. And the last thing I would say is that in this kind of context, I really focus on just getting through each day. It's survival mode. So, but once we seem to be getting through, then you could get back to the New Year's resolutions. Or if it's fun for you to think about New Year's resolutions, go ahead and do that. But thanks a lot, Yannick. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and best wishes to you.
Thank you so much, Richard Koestner.
Okay, bye-bye.